I've lived through the frustration of waiting for my paycheck to hit my account, and just a few days later, feeling like it had simply vanished. It was like an endless cycle. Work, get paid, pay bills, ease the stress with a few purchases, and in the end, go back to zero. It felt like I was always chasing, never really building anything. It was only when I decided to stop repeating this pattern that I realized something powerful. The paycheck isn't the limitation, it's the tool. Even if the amount doesn't change, the way I choose to use it determines whether it will trap me or set me free. What I was missing wasn't more money, it was more awareness. And it was that awareness that showed me that, with specific habits, I could turn my paycheck into a foundation for wealth without waiting for miracles, raises, or external changes. Today, every cent that comes in has a purpose. And that shift in mindset was what started to flip my financial switch. If this inspires you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and come discover the 10 practical ways to grow wealthy with the paycheck you already have. Way 1. Treat your paycheck as a tool, not a prize. For a long time, I saw my paycheck as some sort of reward. It was like, after a whole month of effort, that money was a trophy I could spend however I wanted. And I really did spend it, to make up for exhaustion, to celebrate small victories, to ease frustrations. In the end, the paycheck that was supposed to support me and build my future only gave me temporary relief. The problem with that mindset is simple. When you treat your paycheck like a prize, it runs out before it fulfills its purpose. But when I started seeing it as a tool, everything changed. A tool isn't something you show off. It's something you use to build. And if I wanted to build freedom, I had to direct my money with that awareness. That's when I decided to flip the logic. Before paying bills, before buying anything, I decided to pay myself first. I set aside money for me, for my savings, for my projects. It wasn't leftovers, it was priority. And that attitude, no matter how small at first, made my money start working for me, instead of just passing through my hands. Today, every time I get paid, I don't just feel relief. I feel empowered. Because I know I'm using this tool to sustain the woman I want to become. Comment: my paycheck is my tool. If you've also decided that money isn't a prize, it's the foundation for building freedom. Way 2. Create a simple system to organize your paycheck. I used to believe managing money was complicated. Huge spreadsheets, charts, apps full of categories I couldn't even understand. And since it seemed so hard, I just let it go. I'd spend as the month went on and then ask myself, where did it all go? It was only when I decided to simplify that things started to change. I realized I didn't need anything fancy. All I needed was a clear, practical, and repeatable system to organize what came in and what went out. So I divided my paycheck into 3 blocks: essentials, fixed bills, food, transportation, building, investments, emergency fund, medium and long-term goals, pleasure, leisure, small treats, experiences that make me feel good. This simple system gave me instant clarity. I stopped feeling guilty about spending because what was for pleasure was already set aside. And I stopped living under pressure because essentials already had their space. Most importantly, the money for building was no longer treated as leftovers. It became priority. Over time, this method showed me something powerful. Wealth isn't about making more. It's about knowing exactly what to do with what you already make. Today, I no longer get lost at the end of the month. I know where every dollar goes, and that gives me both security and peace of mind. Comment: my money has a system. If you've also decided to stop improvising and started taking control of your paycheck in a clear way. Way 3. Always make something left over, even if it's small. For a long time, I used to say, with what I earn, there's no way I can save. It was as if saving was a privilege only for those who already had plenty. And so, month after month, I spent it all, waiting for a raise that never seemed enough. Until I understood, saving isn't a consequence, it's a decision. Money doesn't magically stay, you make it stay. It was tough to admit, but necessary. If I kept waiting for money to be left over, I'd spend my entire life without savings, without security, without a future. So I made a pact with myself. Every month, no matter the amount, I would make sure something stayed, even if it was $20, even if it was symbolic. What mattered was building the habit. At first, it seemed insignificant. But over time, those amounts started to grow. More than the balance itself, what grew was my self-confidence. I was finally in control. I no longer depended on chance or financial miracles. And you know what was most powerful? Realizing that saving didn't deprive me. On the contrary, it gave me freedom. Freedom from going into debt over any emergency. Freedom to choose calmly. Freedom to build without pressure. Today, setting money aside before spending is second nature. And no matter how much I earn, the decision to make something left over has never left my life. Comment. I make money left over, even with little. If you've also realized that wealth isn't about the size of your paycheck, but about the habit of prioritizing yourself. Way 4. Spend with intention, not with emotion. For a long time, my credit card was my escape valve. A hard day at work? I'd buy something. A tiring week? I'd treat myself. An argument? I'd spend to ease the frustration. And just like that, my paycheck disappeared into little escapes that never truly solved anything. That's when I realized I wasn't spending out of need, but out of emotion. And if I kept letting my emotions run my finances, I would never have stability. So I decided to flip the logic. Before buying anything, I started asking myself, is this a need or just a momentary desire? Does this expense bring me closer to or further from the life I want to build? Would I buy this if I were 100% at peace right now? These simple questions saved me from dozens of impulse purchases. And more than just saving money, they taught me to respect myself. Because spending with intention isn't about deprivation. It's about making mature choices. I began setting aside money for pleasures intentionally. That way, when I did buy something, there was no guilt. It was a choice, not an escape. And that change brought me lightness. My money had more meaning, and so did I. Today, every purchase reflects who I am, not just what I feel in the moment. And that, in itself, is already wealth. Comment. I spend with intention. If you've also decided to stop buying on impulse and started using your paycheck consciously. Way 5. Stop comparing yourself and act with what you have. For a long time, I believed I'd only start saving and investing once I earned more. I'd look at people with higher salaries and think, with what I make, there's no way. And while I compared myself, I stayed stuck, waiting for perfect conditions that never came. The turning point came when I realized it's not the size of the paycheck that defines the beginning of wealth, but how you handle it. If I couldn't manage the little I had, how could I expect to manage more? That's when I decided to act with what I had. I started small, a symbolic emergency fund, simple cuts on unnecessary spending, conscious choices in my daily life. And most importantly, I began honoring each decision as if it were big, because it was what I had within my reach. Over time, I realized it's not about comparison, but about consistency. While I wasted energy envying those who earned more, I failed to make the most of what was already in my hands. When I shifted that, my focus returned to me, and results started to show. Today, I don't need to wait for the ideal paycheck to build. I build with what I have, and it's exactly that mindset that attracts new opportunities. Comment. I act with what I have. If you've also realized that wealth doesn't start when you earn more, but when you decide to use well what you already have. Way 6. Build a weekly financial routine. I used to be afraid of checking my bank statement. It felt like looking at the numbers would expose me, as if I were always behind, always owing something to myself. So I avoided it. And by avoiding it, my finances became even more disorganized. Living in the dark seemed more comfortable, until chaos showed up. The shift happened when I decided to turn that fear into a ritual. I picked a day of the week, sat down calmly with pen and paper in hand, and started facing my numbers. No guilt, no judgment, just honesty. At first, it was uncomfortable, but as I kept repeating the practice, something inside me shifted. I stopped being a hostage and started becoming the author. And I realized that having a financial routine isn't bureaucracy. It's self-care. Today, every week I review what came in, what went out, what I can adjust, what I'll prioritize for the coming days. This simple habit brought me clarity and lightness. I no longer wait until the end of the month to discover the money is gone. I track it in real time. And the most powerful part? Realizing that when you look at your money with respect, it responds. Choices become more intentional, and the sense of control replaces the fear. Comment. My financial routine is my self-care, if you've also decided to face your numbers with courage instead of running from them. Way 7. Stop waiting for the perfect moment and start now. I've lost count of how many times I told myself, when there's money left over, when I earn more, I'll save. When bills go down, I'll invest. When life gets calmer, I'll organize. And meanwhile, time passed, and nothing changed. The problem wasn't lack of opportunity, it was too much waiting. Then it clicked. The perfect moment never comes. Life will always have bills, unexpected expenses, and desires. If I didn't start with what I had, I'd stay stuck in the same cycle forever. So I started small. I opened my first emergency fund with a symbolic amount. I made my first investment with less than I'd spend on dinner. I organized my spending even if it still looked messy. And little by little, every step began to gain strength. It wasn't about waiting for better conditions. It was about creating them. Because each choice, no matter how small, gave me clarity, confidence, and results. Today, I know wealth isn't born from waiting. It's born from starting. And those who take the first step early get there faster. Comment: I start now. If you've also decided to stop postponing and understood that your financial freedom begins with today's choices. Way 8. Study money as part of your self-care. For a long time, I avoided any topic about finances. I thought it was complicated, boring, and far from my reality. It was as if learning about money was something reserved for specialists or for people who already had a lot. And that belief kept me stuck. I wanted more, but I didn't allow myself to learn how to handle the little I had. The turning point came when I realized money isn't just numbers, it's behavior. And if I didn't understand my own choices, I'd never have the clarity to grow. I started small. A simple book, a quick video, an affordable course. And more than learning concepts, I began to understand my patterns. Why did I spend on impulse? Why did I avoid checking my statement? Why did I always feel it was never enough? Studying finances stopped being an obligation and became self-care. Just as I take care of my health and my mind, taking care of my money became part of my self-respect routine. And the more I learned, the more autonomy I gained. Each new piece of knowledge showed up in more conscious choices, and those choices reshaped both my present and my future. Today, I know freedom doesn't just come from working more. It comes from learning to do better with what's already in my hands. Comment: financial education is my self-care. If you've also realized that taking care of your money is taking care of yourself. Way 9. Learn to say no to protect your paycheck. For a long time, I said yes to everything. Yes to invitations I couldn't afford. Yes to gifts that went beyond my limit. Yes to splitting bills that made no sense for my budget. In the moment, it felt easier to agree than to explain. But in the end, the one paying the price, literally and emotionally, was always me. That's when I realized that saying yes to everyone else was saying no to myself. And if I wanted to build wealth, I had to learn to protect my paycheck. At first, it was uncomfortable. People found it strange. Some even made jokes. But every time I said no, I felt stronger within myself. It was as if I were signing an internal contract of self-respect. Saying no didn't make me lose friends. On the contrary, it gave me clarity about who truly supports me. And it helped me understand that my priority isn't pleasing others, it's building. Today, I don't agree to spend just to avoid disappointing people. I don't compromise my peace to keep up appearances. And every time I choose to protect my money, I'm also protecting my future. Comment: I protect my paycheck with my nose. If you've also decided to stop feeling guilty for choosing your freedom over others' approval. Way 10. Treat money as an ally, not a villain. I grew up hearing phrases like, money doesn't bring happiness, people change when they have too much money, or money is trouble. Without realizing it, those ideas built a relationship of fear and distrust within me. I wanted to prosper, but at the same time, I felt guilty for wanting it. It was as if wealth were a risk, and scarcity a virtue. The result was predictable. I never managed to build anything solid. I constantly sabotaged my own progress, either spending impulsively or ignoring opportunities. Until I realized, money isn't the villain, it's a reflection. It only amplifies who I already am. When I changed that perspective, everything shifted. I started treating money with respect, without idolizing it, and without demonizing it. I began to be grateful for what came in, to be mindful about what went out, and to see every choice as a step toward the woman I wanted to become. Money stopped being a taboo and became a natural conversation. Investing stopped being scary and became a responsibility. And prospering stopped being guilt and became a mission. Today, money doesn't control me. It walks with me. It's my ally, my tool, and part of the legacy I'm building. Comment: money is my ally. If you've also decided to let go of old beliefs and build a new relationship with wealth. Looking back and realizing that my life changed not because my paycheck grew, but because I changed the way I handled it. That's liberating. For a long time, I believed only by earning more I'd find peace. But the truth is, peace started when I took responsibility for what was already in my hands. These 10 ways aren't distant theories. They're practices that pulled me out of autopilot and showed me that wealth doesn't just depend on big paychecks. It depends on small, conscious choices made consistently. Today, I don't wait for money to be left over. I make it left over. I don't spend to numb myself, I spend to build. I don't compare myself, I act with what I have. And above all, I stopped seeing money as the enemy. It became my ally. If you've made it this far, you already know. You don't need to wait for perfect conditions to start. Start with what you have, where you are, and commit to never going back. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but in just 90 days of firm choices, you can look in the mirror and see that you're no longer the same. Comment: I make my paycheck work for me, if you've also decided that wealth will be born from your choices today. And of course, if this content empowered you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another woman who also needs this financial turning point.